Times are uncertain and you're full of doubt. COVID runs rampant, so cover your mouth. You can't go outside, there's no easy way out. But there's a place you can go. Next to a train, no take cluster. Next to a train, no take cluster. Next to a train, go, go, go. Next to a train, no take cluster. Next to a train, no take cluster. Next to a train, no take cluster. Yeah.
Sorry, you're stacked on top of books right now because you see Emily needs the tripod, and when Emily needs the tripod for work, I give Emily the tripod because I can use books. Here we are. This is the final frontier, the last chapter. Get more light on me. Hopefully that looks okay. The last chapter, the final frontier for public speaking, and this is understanding argument. And I mentioned in our last live Zoom meeting that we probably don't understand argument that well. That's true for me too. I'm not trying to be mightier than thou. It's very complex, and often, again, we talked about this at the beginning of the semester, it's not just logic that convinces us to do things, right? So think about what it takes for us to believe in an argument. What does it take for us to believe something and then act on it, right? Because any of you who vape or smoke, for instance, you know and you believe that can lead to lung problems. Whether or not it's cancer, it decreases your lung function. You know that cognitively, logically, you understand that. So why do you smoke? So that leads you down the path of, well, all my decisions aren't purely logical. I'm not purely logical. I have emotions. I do things sometimes that I don't want to do. So there's a lot of aspects to this, and it's important to know how argument works, because for speech 4, that's what you're doing. You're setting up 3 arguments, you're providing evidence, you're making a claim, you're providing evidence, and using reasoning to connect them. All right, so let's talk about how argument works. And I'm going to put something in front of my face here, the slides, and you can go back through if you want to. So as I mentioned, an argument makes a claim. It is cloudy outside. That's a claim. Backs it up with evidence. You probably can't see, but I'm looking outside and it is cloudy. That's all the evidence I need. 1 + 1 = 2, right? That's like a very simplistic argument. So you make a claim, and that's a position or assertion that you want the audience to accept. Cats are better than dogs. Dogs are better than cats. That's a claim. Then you have evidence through supporting materials, which we've talked about. So narratives, examples, definitions, testimony, facts, stats. Those are all types of supporting materials and evidence. And then what links these in your brain is reasoning. And there's different types of reasoning. There's deductive, inductive, causal, analogical. And we'll go through all 4 of those. And we often don't even think about the type of reasoning we're using to get through our life or to make a decision. But you are using some type of reasoning when you make a skilled decision, when you think about it. So that's simplistically how argument works. Types of reasoning, again, let's start with deductive. Relies on formal logic, follows this pattern: major premise, minor premise, conclusion. Okay, and if you've taken a philosophy class, you've probably seen an example like this. All people are mortal and will die. Jenny is a person. Therefore, Jenny will die. A plus B = C. Both premises must be true for the conclusion to be true. Right? So if all people are mortal and will die, but Jenny is a lizard, then by this argument alone, that doesn't prove that Jenny will die. Obviously, we know lizards die, but then you'd have to change it to like all living things will eventually die. A lizard, Jenny the lizard, is a living thing. Therefore, Jenny will die, right? So both of them have to be true in order for you to accept this. So that's very simplistic deductive reasoning. We have inductive, so you support a claim with specific cases and instances, and you ask your audience, your classmates, to accept a claim based on a few cases. And this is what we use. We use inductive reasoning a lot. So if you always leave for school, or Jennifer always leaves for school at 7 a.m. and you're always on time, you make the connection in your mind that if I leave at 7 a.m. today, I'll be on time again. So you're relying on probability that the conclusion is likely true. But is it always true? If I always leave at 7 a.m. and get to Longview at 7:25, will I always 100% of the time be there at 7:25? Of course not, because what can happen? Flat tire, car wreck, traffic, run out of gas. There's infinite possibilities, right? But we rely on that probability when we do things. That's inductive reasoning, when you're relying on the probability that something will happen because history shows it or proves it to be true, your experience. Causal argues that one action event brought about another action or event. So now we're getting to more subjective forms of arguing, because you're asking your audience to believe in the strength of those relationships. Okay, so since taking on a carnivore diet, if you know what that is, meat and salt and water only, probably not a good idea. Will probably lead to colorectal cancer. I have increased the weight of my bench press since on this. Therefore, the carnivore diet leads to greater strength. So, do you think, as an audience member, that that is a likely, that is a strong argument? Is that enough evidence for you? Probably not. You're going to want to ask questions like, well, what was your diet before? Were you in a period of weight training that you knew you were going to increase your bench, right? Did you lift the same amount of times per week? All this stuff. So causal reasoning, typically you want a lot of evidence and experiments to actually prove. Okay, so like causal is, since 2005 the sea levels have been rising. CO2 has also been rising from cars. Therefore, CO2 from cars is leading somehow, and they would give you more science, to rising sea levels. That's a causal argument that you choose or choose not to believe in. Lastly, analogical. You're comparing two things. What holds true for one also holds true for another. Okay, so this is when you're comparing two things and you're telling your audience, this is just like this. Therefore, we can use examples from this case and apply them to this case. So here's my example. Weed and alcohol are both substances that should be legalized due to their similarities. Both impaired users aren't too dangerous. Some would even argue that alcohol is more dangerous than marijuana, etc. So I'm asking you to believe in that comparison, and you can either reject or accept that. You're relying on the comparison being believable. That's analogical. You're using an analogy. Okay, now I'm going to ask you, I'm going to talk a little bit, but on the slides, this is slide number 8 down below. You'll see a video and you'll see something about logical fallacies. And I mentioned that in Zoom too. Again, if you've taken a philosophy class or a reasoning class, or you are in debate, you know what logical fallacies are, but that doesn't mean you're good at avoiding them. And once you understand what logical fallacies are and how prevalent they are in modern argument today, in Twitter and Facebook arguments, my God, they are very, very numerous. You can't turn back, and then you're going to be one of those people who, luckily, you're armed with that information of, oh, that argument does not follow. Basically, a fallacy is when the reasoning of that argument, right, the thing that connects the pieces, is weak. It does not follow. It does not make sense. So watch that video. She runs through like 12 fallacies super quick, and there's a lot. There's also a website called, I think it's whatismyfallacy.com. Let me look that up real quick. yourlogicalfallacyis.com. And this has 24 logical fallacies, which are, again, this is like super Greek historical learning about argumentation. And this is good for you to know. Like, this is good for you to know moving forward in college. Not so you can be the person who goes, oh, that's a straw man. Oh, that's a red herring. But so you can understand and calmly tell somebody that that reasoning doesn't work. So like, I'm on this website and I'll put the link down there too. But a good example is like middle ground fallacy. So that's saying that a compromise or middle point between two extremes is the truth. Okay, which always isn't necessarily true. But some people think extreme A, extreme B, the middle is correct, and they'll use that as an argument, right? It's like a centrism thing, if you think about politics. So this is a good website to use, good resource. And then what I usually do in class, I really want to place emphasis on this chapter before you write your outline, or while you're writing your outline. Just make sure your reasoning follows. If I can look at your outline and I see fallacies and I can pick your arguments apart super easily, then that's a weak, very weak argument, right? So a good argument just means that it makes sense. The evidence is strong, the reasoning links up. Now that doesn't mean that it is true necessarily, it just means it's constructed well. And then your audience can choose to believe or not believe in your claim. That's up to them. So you'll see on the last slide, what I typically do in class, we spend 2 days on this. One day I lecture about this, which I didn't go as deep as I usually do because I like to ask questions, and unfortunately we can't really do that. But I do like quick fire round debates, and I'll put these up in front of my face right now. And what I typically do is like divide the class on these topics, and they're very controversial on purpose, right? So I can divide you all. Like, should the death penalty be abolished? Should minimum wage be raised? And then something about religion, right? So here I said it's an outdated concept that negatively affects too many aspects of modern life to still be considered useful. So I divide the class into pro and anti-religion groups. And I'll give you like 5 minutes to come up with your arguments. And it's always interesting how fast you all typically, and we aren't going to do this exercise, so I'm speaking hypothetically here, but historically, my past classes, they instantly go to fallacies. They instantly go to slippery slope with minimum wage. Ad hominem, which is appeal to the person, right? You're attacking whoever's making the argument rather than the argument itself. Happens a lot, especially with like religion. And then it's just great. It's a great activity. So I just encourage you, like, when you see arguments online, even go to yourlogicalfallacyis.com and see if they are using a logical fallacy, because they may be. And then remember, just because something is true through evidence, right, and the reasoning works, doesn't mean that our actions will be in line with that claim. Just like the vaping example or smoking. You know it's bad for you. The evidence is there. The reasoning backs itself up. Study after study shows that if you smoke, you have a higher risk to get lung cancer, etc. But that doesn't mean, and you can believe in that claim, but that doesn't mean you're going to do anything about it. And that's what's really interesting about us as you know, the human condition, human beings. It's like all these things may be true, but that doesn't always mean something to us. So just think about this stuff. If you have questions, let me know. I really love this chapter, and I hope you take the time. There's ants all over this counter. Sorry, that distracted me. Take the time to look through it and really think about it. This matters to you. This matters to your future essays, your future classes. Just being equipped with this knowledge is something that can really benefit you moving forward, so you just don't agree with whoever's the loudest, which we see a lot of, unfortunately. So I hope you enjoyed this. If you have questions about argumentation, fallacies, etc., I can help you out. I'm still learning too, so just let me know. And for the last time, all right, at least through these videos, be well, stay safe. Woodring out.